Hello, and welcome to the 2024 WKU Staff Regent Forum. Thanks everybody for joining us in the room today and appreciate our candidates' commitment to be here today and to be able to represent WKU staff for the next 3 years on the Board of Regents. I want to cover our format briefly. We'll allot 90 seconds for each candidate for an opening statement. And then we'll roll into the series of questions that we've collected from staff members. Each one of those answers will be allotted a 60-second answer for each candidate. I will tell you in advance, we are not going to be sticklers on the time. We have a mechanism of a 15-second warning and then a red card to let people know that the time is up. But we ask that they complete their thought to better inform the folks that are going to be voting for them. But of course, everyone will be respectful, not abuse that policy. So we'll just keep it very light. So if you're timing at home and we get to 61 seconds, it's okay. I'd also like to extend thanks for everybody that has worked with our candidates and conversed with them and convinced them to run for Regent. It's a very important role on campus. So thank you all. I will now turn the floor over to Senator Vincent for our to address our candidates for opening statements and then questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. So we'll just go ahead and do introductions. We'll start with Amber.
Hello, so my name is Dr. Amber Scott Belt. Many of you do know me. For those who don't, I'm the Executive Director for Operations and Administration in the Office of the Provost. And for those who have no idea what a provost is, that's the Chief Academic Officer who oversees the largest division of the university, which is academic affairs. So why should you select me for your regent? Well, I'll give you the top 3 reasons. Because I have an extraordinary amount of experience, both breadth and depth, in the areas that matter most to you. Compensation. I have been a compensation analyst for over 10 years, and I'm currently responsible for overseeing the compensation processes for faculty compensation. Having meaningful and purposeful work. As an individual who has joined WKU 13 years ago as a generalist and then advanced all the way to executive director, I understand acutely that not only does advancement require grit, but it also requires opportunity. And not everybody endeavors to advance, but every individual endeavors to have purposeful and meaningful work. And lastly, and probably most importantly, I recognize that every individual on this campus does extraordinary endeavors every day to do all of the things and do all of the work that most people don't even notice. But I also recognize that the climb to greater heights has been very steep. And on some days it feels insurmountable, but it's not. We do have many challenges ahead, but we have done so many extraordinary things. And I promise if you give me the opportunity, I will serve you with honor, dignity, and in the privilege that I know it is to be your regent. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Brian.
Good morning. My name is Brian Denning. I'm the Executive Director of Budget and Financial Planning in the Budget Office. First, I'd like to thank the Staff Senate for putting this forum together today, and like to thank Regent Brinkley for serving as a good regent in the position for the last several years, and hope to be able to replace and fill in his shoes there. Just a little bit about me. I worked on this campus for the last 14 years. I worked in a contracted role with an outside vendor starting in 2010 up until 2016. And then I became a member of the university staff in January of 2016 and worked in several different units within the university. Was in the international office, was in enrollment management, which became enrollment and student experience. And now I'm in the Office of Strategy, Operations, Finance, and the Budget Office. So I think I've got a wide assortment of knowledge of different parts of the university and different needs of different staff in different organizations. Also, just a little bit about me as far as, I'm a parent, have 4 children. 3 of those children have gone to WKU. One is graduated, recently graduated from graduate school this year. And then I have 2 more that are, or 1 more that's going to graduate in May of this year. And then, I have a junior in high school that will be attending here in just a couple of years. Also, my wife graduated here in both her undergraduate degree and her master's degree. So I think I have the knowledge of the experience of being an employee, but also being a parent and knowing what entitles, what the expectations of parents and spouse of a student as well. So that's just a little bit about me, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
Thank you, Brian. Jennifer?
Hi, good morning. It's really an honor to be here with Amber and Brian. I'm Dr. Jennifer Hammonds. I'm the registrar and interim director of the graduate school. I started higher education in 2004. I came to WKU in 2019. It was just a move for us to be closer to family. My husband was in the military at the time, so, you know, we needed to be closer to Nashville for where he was gonna drill and for his healthcare for the VA system as he works there. So WKU was a really good fit for me personally and professionally. So it's worked out really well. Since I've been at WKU, I've really got to know a lot of students, staff, faculty, whether that be leadership and alumni. And so I've made it a goal to really understand how campus fits together, right? Like, I'm in academic affairs, but I work so closely with enrollment, student experience, and with strategy operation finance. It's too long of a title. And so, like, it's a puzzle, right? We all have to figure out what our fit is in that puzzle and how we can, you know, put the puzzle together and make sure that that's going to be really solid for the future. Because again, all of us are just, you know, for me, I'm just starting here and I want to see what the future holds for WKU and be a part of that. And I truly believe that staff needs someone that's going to be willing to advocate for them every day. I know I do that for my staff in their role, and I'm happy to do that for everybody else that's in a role as a staff member. I think being in the roles that I serve now, I really got to be central to campus, whether that be commencement and a number of things that, you know, we overlap and kind of work with as a university. And those are university events that I'm really proud to be a part of. And so I know that, you know, we have very different backgrounds and skills, but I know that we all share, you know, WKU success is our most important goal. And so I'm pretty sure with studying with them that, you know, whatever the result of the election is, that you're going to have really good results and a good representative in the staff and the board of regents. But if I'm chosen, I do promise to use that platform to speak up for staff, to always monitor what your interests are, and to champion for your hard work, because you really do amazing work.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and get started with the questions that were submitted. We'll start in alpha order. So Amber, the first question will be this kind of, you guys have all have addressed this, but you guys can add to whatever you want to. Why do you want to be staff regent, and what strengths do you bring to this position?
So I have well over a decade of experience in a whole lot of things. I started at WKU, as I said, as an HR generalist, moved to HR specialist, compensation analyst, overseeing staff compensation, then moved on to the office of the provost as assistant to the provost, and now I'm executive director for operations and administration. I mean, I'm acutely aware of efficiencies. The majority of our budget is personnel, right? So we have to find new and creative ways and continue to do that. We're doing that all over campus now. We have to continue to do that and continue to support ways in which we can grow. The things that are important to us require resources, and the way that we continue to grow and advance resources is to get into and understand how we can improve our academic program offerings, how we can be more efficient on the operations side, and get busy doing the things we love to do and spend less time on the things that we don't enjoy as much.
Brian, why do you want to be staff regent, and what strengths do you bring to this position?
I think that the strengths that I would bring is that my diversity of knowledge of the different organizations that I've been a part of and even assisted with that I've not worked in. I've worked closely with student financial assistance and with admissions. and closely with, the current Board of Regents and seeing what actually happens in a board meeting and what happens prior to the board meeting and how that information is put together. I think that, the most important thing here is that the staff regent needs to be able to represent the staff interest and have the ability to understand the needs of what need to take place and also what can take place and what's feasible, it's not feasible.
Thank you. Jennifer, why do you want to be staff regent and what strengths do you bring to this position?
Yeah, I want to be part of the board, and so that, the university does advance. We do need to kind of look at a review of what we're spending and to take advantage of the resources that we have. I think we underutilize our own resources on campus. We have a number of experts in a lot of areas, like just for example, earlier, we had somebody that, does tax stuff come and talk to. So I think we just underutilize our own courses, our own training, and all of the expertise that we have on campus. And that's a way to minimize the resource for what we have to purchase or, overspend elsewhere. And so I would love to be able to represent to see what we have internally that can be used and look at some of our software that we have. I think we underutilize some of what we have. So I would love to be able to take a look at that as a goal. Strengths, I think I have a good relationship with staff, with students, and with faculty now. And so that's going to let me step into that role really early on. Having connection to the board at commencement has kind of let me get to know some of them to where I can be of value from the beginning.
Thank you. Brian, we're going to start with you. How will you support WKU staff in WKU issues such as pay, compensation, budget cuts?
I think the most critical part is to be honest and to let people know the current situation. And no matter what that situation is, whether it's state appropriation, enrollment, tuition, and then be honest of what can be done. And it's important then to, if it's compensation and wages, that there would be an advocate for what's best for the staff, but also for the university, and that if there are budget cuts, that we try to exempt that and still make wages not part of those cuts, but be feasible and have an idea of what is needed to advance the university.
Jennifer, how will you support WKU staff and WKU issues such as pay, compensation, and budget cuts?
Yeah, I think we need to advocate for staff. And again, that's their compensation, it's total benefits, right? Like, some of us could really want to do wellness. Some of us want to do a lot of other advancement opportunities and some of that. So I think it's not just addressing some of the compensation issues that we have, but also kind of looking at what it's going to need to do that, and staff morale gets boosted from that. Tell me that question one more time.
How will you support WKU staff and WKU issues such as pay, compensation, and budget cuts? Yeah, okay, thank you. Amber, can we repeat it for you?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So how would I support it? Well, first by listening. I mean, Regent Brinkley's done an excellent job of doing that, listening to your concerns and then finding ways to bring those before the board. Now, we have to clarify, of course, what the board's responsibility is. The board has a broad overview. They're not involved in the day-to-day operations. So my area of expertise and current position can also simultaneously help in improving and lifting on the day-to-day and daily operations. I mean, I'm currently involved in a number of very large initiatives to improve efficiencies. We're looking at faculty load and compensation. We're in the middle of moving to a new faculty credentialing database that'll help offload a tremendous amount of work that we used to do manually, right? For those of us who've been here for a while, myself 13 years, we remember a time when there were many more staff members doing this extraordinary lift of information management, and we simply don't have that anymore. So we have to continually learn how to, as Jennifer pointed out, better utilize the resources that we currently have that doesn't cost us any more money to use, only time and effort. We also have to find new ways of approaching compensation. That's a huge question that comes up a lot. And it's what I do for a living. So just like my buddies from HR, we listen to it on the daily. I can tell you without a doubt, it is one of the foremost things in the minds of all leadership across WKU. So the fact that it feels like we're being slow to address compensation is not for lack of effort or desire. It is simply that we are continuing to work on how we're transitioning into a new budget model, and that takes time. And then we're trying to understand how we can best utilize the resources that we already have available. And then we also have to figure out a way to generate new resources. Because new resources and maximizing the current ones are how we free up dollars to address not only compensation, but also professional development. Things like succession planning. We often talk about professional development for staff and how can I advance and how can I have pathways to do that. But the broader question also is, how can we encourage people to take advantage of those opportunities, support that, and holistically improve compensation, total compensation, not just dollars.
Thank you. Jennifer, the next question, we'll start with you. Given your day job, the department it is in, and who you report to, are you comfortable being accountable to staff? And what conflicts do you see arising if you were elected regent?
Yeah, for me, I do report up through the provost office up until I took oversight of the graduate school. I didn't actually report directly to the provost, so I do have some layers in between to where I don't anticipate any conflict with that. I am privileged to serve on a number of committees within academic affairs for curriculum and some of that. So I do get to see a lot of the curriculum and some of the things that's going on in the academic affairs side. So I think it's a benefit to serve that and to be able to promote that to the board. I don't anticipate any conflicts. And again, we do have the ability to abstain a vote or something if we need to. So, you know, that would be always something that's an option, but I can't anticipate any conflict that.
Amber, given your day job, the department it is in, and who you report to, are you comfortable being accountable to staff? And what conflicts do you see arising if you were elected regent?
I report directly to the provost and vice president for academic affairs, who is the second in command of the entire institution with respect to hierarchy. I anticipate no problems or issues whatsoever. Our office regularly participates in the shared governance process. I participate in the shared governance process weekly as part of my already regular duties. And I see no conflicts of interest. As Jennifer pointed out, if I did, we are certainly able to abstain.
You mind reading this
Repeat it,
one?
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Given your day job, the department it is in, and who you report to, are you comfortable being accountable to staff? And what conflicts do you see arising if you were elected regent?
Yes, I'm very comfortable, and I report to AVP Ronaldo Domine and then directly to Susan Howard, who's the executive vice president. So and she then reports to the president, but I don't see any conflicts. I know that I do directly work on the budget, and I work closely with the regents in the submission of the budget process. So, but I think that could be a benefit in answering questions and developing additional relationships with the current regents. But obviously, I can abstain from any vote that's needed to be.
Thank you. Amber, the next question starts with you. How do you plan to stay connected and hear feedback from staff members across all of the different departments and offices on campus?
So if I were elected regent, first thing I would do is obviously attend a staff Senate meeting, and then I would ask you, how do you want to stay connected? You want an email address? You want me to open up some other type of social media account? Shall I go to IT? I mean, however it is that you want to try to contact me and have a relationship with me, I'm happy to reach out to you, work with you, and talk with you. I stay already connected on a daily basis with areas of concern involving staff, so I don't foresee an issue in that.
Thank you. Brian, how do you plan to stay connected and hear feedback from staff members across all of the different departments and offices on campus?
I'll first take a little advice from Regent Brinkley. We'll probably set up a separate email account, so if anyone wanted to email or contact anonymously. And also, I'm also very easy to get a hold of. My cell numbers right on my description on my email, so it's available to anybody that wants it. And I would, and of course, we can send emails via this campaign. And so everybody here that wants my email or wants my cell number will have it. And I'm happy to hear and stay in contact and hear any issue that anybody wants to discuss so that I can represent their matters.
Thank you, Brian. Jennifer, how do you plan to stay connected and hear feedback from staff members across all of the different departments and offices on campus?
Yeah, and I mean, I think my answer is very much similar to theirs. I mean, I think, you know, for me to know your interests is for me to talk to you to figure out what those are and what your pain points are and things that you need addressed and how to move those forward. I mean, I'm only going to know that if I ask you. And, you know, I have no problems. One of the things that I did as a supervisor was meet with everybody and try to figure out what they do, how they do it, how I can better serve them. And I would do that with you as a group as a whole. I mean, that's no different. I need to be able to listen and be able to respond and think of what best practice is and what kind of research I can do to make sure that, you know, we do represent that. I'd like to think that even if you could call me, email me, whatever the case may be, and however it works best for you, that would be kind of on your end and how I can respond to that. And I'd be willing to do that in whatever means necessary.
Thank you, Jennifer. Next question starts with you, Brian. Do you think the ramp budget model is working? Or do you see most major decisions still being dictated by top leadership?
We're still relatively early in the ramp process. You know, I know that the ramp model itself started around 2017, but it was put on hold and there was some years that it was going to mirror the other budget process. But overall, I do think it's working and I do think it gets better each year. I think that the growth of the BEC, which is the Budget Executive Committee, has made a lot of progress over the last couple of years. And I think each year that we go through this, that we learn from our kind of mistakes in the past. But so I do think that the way it's set up, that the colleges control the revenue in the ramp model, and those decision points are made for what's in their best interest, which also then brings up the best interest of the university. So I do think that it's up to the leadership to get everybody involved in that decision and make sure that those impacts, those points are made during that process. But I do think it's working, yes.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer, do you think the ramp budget model is working, or do you see most major decisions still being dictated by top leadership?
I mean, I think it's very much a work in progress, and in my role, you know, I've been responsible for my unit budget and I've been a good steward of my budget. And I think, you know, knowing who's not and how that's being spent and maybe some more understanding of how that's spent. I mean, sometimes you are going to spend more than what you anticipated based on cost of things. And I think we have to be able to understand that. I think we have to educate folks on why that's happening. For me personally, my budget has not been directed from a top-down approach. I mean, I do have a voice in where I think that money needs to go for the resources that we have. I was fortunate this year to actually gain revenue. We figured out a way that we could increase revenue within the registrar's office. And so again, that's a good thing for us, and that can help with some of the expenses that we have. That takes a little bit less out of the university budget. I do think we have a long way to go though. And I think again, it's understanding more of the budget and how that process works. And that's something that, all of us as, unit managers need to have more of a voice in. And so I'd like to figure out if it's really working. From what I see, I think there are still some challenges, but I can't speak to that, having not been able to be in the process as much as I would need.
Thank you. Amber, do you think the ramp budget model is working, or do you see most major decisions still being dictated by top leadership?
So it hasn't been my experience that most of the major decisions are dictated by top leadership. I'm, like Brian, heavily involved in the budget development process, specifically on the operational side. And while we have had conversations about utilizing the ramp model since 2017, we're usually actually only on year 3 of having actually rolled it out and attempting to utilize the tools necessary to make appropriate decisions. So I think what a lot of people are experiencing is more the growing pains of moving from a centralized budget to a decentralized budget, and that's no small task. It's a Herculean effort. It takes a tremendous amount of time and effort to educate people and to try to help people learn to work within the parameters of that budget, because you are now kind of allowing the colleges to really drive that rhythm, or that is at least where we are headed to. So I do believe the ramp model is working in its infancy. I also agree with Jennifer that we still have a little bit of time to go.
Thank you. Okay, Jennifer, this question's for you. It's kind of long, so I'll read it. In a forum in the fall, President Caboni told us that he wasn't certain how the university could have overspent the budget from the previous fiscal year when he didn't feel that there had been any extravagant spending. Is there any spending the university has done that you would consider to be extravagant?
I don't know that I could speak to that. I think that's, at least in my role, I haven't heard that, X person has spent some sort of extravagant money. That's not been my purview. I don't feel like the institution did that intentionally, and I don't know of any unit that would have done that to put us in a position in some sort of extravagant spending without being able to justify what that was. But I would really need more specifics in that question to try to have a better answer for that. I think that's sort of a loaded question, and what the answer might be.
Thank you, appreciate it. So I won't read the whole thing. I'll just say, is there any spending the university has done that you would consider to be extravagant?
There is not any spending, to my knowledge. I would have to, again, agree with Jennifer. I'd have to see specifically what data someone is looking at that kind of warranted or justified that question. And because the budget information that I have reviewed, I agree, does not illustrate that there's any extravagant spending.
Yeah, and my answer is going to be very similar to the other two. That, to my knowledge, I don't know of any extravagant spending by any departments in the university. I feel like that each unit knows what their budget is and is responsible for their spending, and I feel like, for the most part, everyone's a good steward of the university funds.
Thank you. Amber, we're going to start with you. The next question. As a staff member and a representative of other staff, what would be the first insights and feedback you would want to share with the other members of the board?
I'm honestly not sure. I would actually have to ask the staff, what insights would you like for me to share? Like Brian, I participate in board meetings and watch those, as all of us do. We're interested in what's going on. I think that the representatives that have been attending the board meetings, and that includes Regent Brinkley, have done an excellent job representing staff interests, and I will continue to do that. I don't think it's well known what the staff issues are, and that is, of course, as I said in my opening statement, compensation, opportunities for advancement, and feeling meaningful and purpose in your everyday work.
Brian, as a staff member and representative of other staff, what would be the first insights and feedback you would want to share with the other members of the board?
I think the first thing is just I would want to make sure that they understand that staff wants to be heard, and that I would be here as a representative of the staff, and that I would be taking feedback through continual conversations with those staff members to let them know that I'm going to be here to represent those interests. So.
Jennifer, as a staff member and representative of other staff, what would be the first insights and feedback you would want to share with other members of the board?
I would love to tell some success stories and tell some of the things of how staff really do contribute to the institution. I don't think we do enough of that. I think it really takes someone who knows what the staff does and what their roles are to be able to communicate that to the board. I mean, I think that is, you know, part of what I would hear. I mean, I don't think we see anything that represents or that, you know, showcases longevity to the institution. And I would love to see the board kind of see that, you know, I've been here 5 years, or, you know, you've been here 10 or 15, and show that we have commitment to the institution and what we do is really valuable. And we need to showcase that to the board more often, because I think they want to hear that, right? We do faculty presentations at the board to show what faculty are doing and the good things they're doing. There's no reason that staff can't be represented in that. And I just think we really need to tell our story better.
Thank you, Jennifer. Brian, the next question starts with you. Do you believe it's appropriate for board members at a public university to be subject to a gag order prohibiting them from sharing publicly their opinion on issues before the board? Let me repeat it.
So their personal opinions on the board, or?
The question was just, it's appropriate for board members at a public university to be subject to a gag order prohibiting them from sharing publicly their opinion on issues before the board.
I think that the board members, as they're appointed, and then as the faculty and staff and student that as are elected, are there to represent the university. And I think that their knowledge and personal opinions will have an impact on how they vote. But I don't see that personal opinions really have a place within the conversations of the, I guess, of the committee and members.
Thank you. Jennifer, do you believe it's appropriate for board members at a public university to be subject to a gag order prohibiting them from sharing publicly their opinion on issues before the board?
I think there's got to be more context to that question for the person who submitted it, and I really need more information in to know like what they were seeing and what they're hearing and what that is. I don't know that I have enough information from that question, but I would say that, you know, my goal there isn't my personal belief. I'm representing the institution as a whole and staff as a whole. I mean, I can't say that I understand what they're trying to ask from that question, but my personal belief shouldn't be an issue within the board.
Thank you. I'm gonna read the question again.
No, I think.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm not familiar with gag orders being issued, so I would also need more context, but I will say this. The role of the Board of Regents is to represent the interests of the institution. It's important to remember that WKU is not a place, it's a people. And the board is responsible for representing all of the people and the interests of all the people. And to make decisions that are sustainable and meant to continue to allow WKU to thrive. So I agree, my personal opinion doesn't matter. And if it's a closed session, those are closed for a reason, so that the regents have the opportunity to speak freely and really kind of hash out those agreements or disagreements, so that when they finish those, then they can be a united front, and I would support that.
Thank you. Jennifer, what do you see as the biggest challenge you would face in taking on the staff regent responsibilities?
For me, it's probably, I mean, just time and making sure that I've talked to enough staff to know what their interests are and what their goals are and what their needs are, so that I could communicate that. I do think the board is a huge responsibility in making sure that you're prepared for that meeting to be able to talk to the other regents to make sure they truly understand how that impacts the university, and to be able to do that is going to take, you know, it does take time to prepare for that. So I think that's going to be what I would say.
Thank you. Amber, what do you see as the biggest challenge you would face in taking on the staff regent responsibilities?
I don't really see taking on the staff responsibilities as challenging. I think of it as more as an opportunity to serve. It will be an extraordinary time commitment, but it is a time commitment worth making, and certainly I'm hopeful to have that opportunity. Thank you.
I would concur that probably time, and I think, like I said, we all three have day jobs here, so that's the extra time commitment that will be needed to meet with staff and to make sure that you fully understand the issues that are at hand, and then the time commitments of the committees and board work itself. But I do think that it's valuable, and I look forward to the opportunity to do it, because I feel like I would help contribute to the university, which, like I said, which I've been here in Bowling Green all my life and love. So I would hope for the opportunity.
Amber, as staff regent, what specifically will you do to draw the attention of your fellow regents to make an honest assessment of the impact of decisions by top administration on the quality of work life at WKU and on the Western Spirit?
I think all regents, but especially the staff and faculty regent, have an ongoing responsibility to continually remind each other that every decision they make again impacts an extraordinary number of people. Your livelihood, which by extension impacts your family and your hopes and dreams for the future. So it's important. It's an extraordinary amount of responsibility, as any board of directors or board of regents are. And I would just continually, as Jennifer suggested, do my very best to highlight all of the amazing things staff are doing. And not only that, but to continually remind them of the challenges that we're trying to overcome and obstacles and ways that they could help eliminate.
It comes along with you,
Yeah.
Brian. As a staff regent, what specifically will you do to draw the attention of your fellow regents to make an honest assessment of the impact of decisions by the top administration on the quality of work life at WKU and on the Western Spirit?
Okay. Well, I think the quality of work life is a critical issue, and I think that the senior leadership, and I think the board are aware of that, but it is important that the faculty and staff here feel appreciated and feel like their work is meaningful, and feel like that they have the benefits that are justified for the work that they do. And I think it's important to remind the board of that and senior leadership of that. But I don't think that that the board right now would take lightly the work that the staff does.
Jennifer, as a staff regent, what specifically will you do to draw the attention of your fellow regents to make an honest assessment of the impact of decisions by the top administration on the quality of work life at WKU and on the Western Spirit?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of what you have to do is come to that meeting prepared. I think you have to know what's at hand and what the conversation might be, and kind of what the conversation that you need to have with them based on what their assumptions are. And you'll have to know kind of what some of the board members have as an assumption, and be able to come with best practice, come with your research from what you're doing to be able to advocate for staff within the board. And again, I think they all want WKU to be a good place. I think they're doing that. I think their commitment to the board shows that. But I think it's going to take a staff regent that comes prepared. David, you've done that well, so we're all good. But just to be able to come prepared to make sure that, you know, you can show why you think this is a good idea or why you think it's a bad idea, and how to get people to understand that, you know, it may not be in the best interest of staff, and that's something to be considered, but you'll have to know why it isn't to be able to help people to understand that. And so I think I would make sure that I'm prepared to have that conversation with them.
Thank you, Jennifer. Brian, this is a really long question, but I think you guys will get the gist of it. So In light of WKU's ongoing budget cuts and crisis, do you believe it is time for the Board of Regents to assess whether WKU should leave the NCAA Division I Football Bowl subdivision and move to the Division I Football Championship subdivision, where costs and expenses are significantly lower, in order to reduce the 12 to 16 million subsidy that WKU athletics requires each year from the University Education and General Fund?
That's an easy one for me. No, I do not believe. I think athletics is a critical part of this university. I think that that's the best advertisement that the university gets. And, if they're on TV, 12 times a year and making a bowl game, and then the advertisement they get from the basketball teams. And I know that the FCS also has, that wouldn't change your basketball standing, but it would change your conference affiliation, and it could also change the amount of television opportunities you got. So I think that athletics plays a critical role in both recruiting for students here and for the opportunities that we get to be nationally televised.
Thank you, Brian. Jennifer, do you feel it should be a move to save money from athletics?
I mean, I would have to see those numbers and to see that that's really a savings and to see that that's best for the institution. Again, I think that comes back to what I said a few minutes ago about research, best practice. I think that, again, I like athletics, I support athletics, but there's a lot that would go into that decision that would have to be made. And I think just looking at the dollar to know that it's going to be a savings is enough, because I have a feeling that to move to do some of those things is going to have a cost involved, whether that be lack of exposure and any of those things that decision couldn't be taken lightly. And I think that for me to stay up here and to, I could flip a quarter and answer that, I don't think that's fair without really knowing the impact of that decision from start to finish and how long it would really take us to realize that. I just don't see that that's a decision I could make at this time.
Amber?
I'm gonna echo my colleagues of all of the areas that the Board of Regents reviews. The athletics was most certainly, as far as which conference is better, is most certainly not my area of expertise by any means. But I am a strong supporter of athletics. I do agree that we have the best mascot in the entire world. And athletics is a vital, important role in our recruiting process and also our community, right? It's part of what helps people have a sense of identity with Western Kentucky University. So I would need to see the numbers and understand exactly what type of, how moving from one conference to another would impact, or how changes in budget for athletic would also impact that program.
Thank you. Jennifer, next question. Do you feel there should be more open discussion of matters facing WKU during the Board of Regents committee and quarterly meetings, rather than individual regents asking all their questions of top administrators in private meetings before the board gathers?
I'm gonna have you repeat that one more time so I can think about what you're asking.
No problem. Do you feel there should be more open discussion of matters facing WKU during the Board of Regents committee and quarterly meetings, rather than individual regents asking all their questions of top administrators in private meetings before the board gathers?
I would say that individuals have an opportunity to go to the board through public comment if there's something that they're, really, I guess, excited about or concerned about. They can do that. I think we do have an opportunity to work through our staff regent to bring those to the board. They have gained that respect within the board to be our voice. And so I think that, utilizing them to your advantage and is what you should do. You did elect them to be your representative, but I do feel like there is an avenue that, we can have a voice with staff outside of just through that region. Especially, I know that most of the senior leadership welcome to hear what those concerns are. And again, you need to do your research and be able to have that support with you when you want to bring those concerns forward. So I think, again, there are avenues for individuals to be involved and to have, an opinion and to talk through that if they want to. But otherwise, I think utilizing the staff regents really in somebody's best interest.
Thank you. Amber, do you feel there should be more open discussion matters facing WKU during the Board of Regents committee and quarterly meetings rather than individual regents asking all their questions of top administrators in private meetings before the board gathers?
So I think that both have a place. So the Board of Regents receives their packet in advance for a reason, so that they can go through, review that, and better understand educate themselves on what's in the material. After all, they're not involved in the day-to-day operations of the institution. So the majority, I would presume, of the questions that or the conversations they're having are clarifying questions, trying to better understand the materials that are before them, so that when they are before the public in these committee and full board meetings, they can actually make responsible decisions and can speak educatedly about whatever topic that it is. So I don't see an issue with them having conversations with top leadership for clarification, understanding, and the mission and vision of the institution.
Right. I would agree wholeheartedly with Amber. Those packets go out in advance and as being, and sometimes receiving some of the budget questions from some of the regents. There's nothing that significant of those questions other than not understanding them, what maybe one line item is, or just asking for additional clarification. So that I do think that those questions have to be asked so that the regents have an informed decision during the regents meeting of what they're looking at. With that being said, we also have, that's the reason we're here holding this election, is that we have a representative form of regents here, so that the staff does have a voice where they have a staff regent that is representing them within those meetings as well.
Thank you, Brian. Amber, back to you. Staff regent is a vital role that requires many additional unpaid hours of reading, work, and meetings. Do you feel that you have the time to devote to this role without it interfering with both your professional and personal responsibilities and without being overwhelmed?
I do. So one of the nice things about being in the period of life that I am is my children are grown. I no longer have the long hours in the evenings of running children here, there, and yonder. I actually, for those of you who work with me regularly, know I'm regularly engaged on the weekends and holidays and evenings. So the time commitment is not a problem. And also, I would like to state further that when staff members also get the email that says the Board of Regents is going to meet, that's an excellent time for you to also review that packet and then reach out to myself or any of the other two, again, extraordinary candidates, whoever you elect, to ask your questions then. The earlier the better. That gives your representative the opportunity to also get clarification and to be better able to represent you in those meetings.
Yeah, Brian, do you feel you have the time to devote to this role without it interfering with both your professional and personal responsibilities and without being overwhelmed?
I do, and I agree that the time constraints was my number one concern when deciding whether I was going to run for this. But I also, as I mentioned in my opening statement, I have kids that are starting to get older now, and so I don't have the commitments that I did previously. I could not have run for this position 5 years ago, but now is a time in my life when I look forward to the opportunity to serve the university.
You're right. Jennifer, do you feel you have the time to devote to this role without it interfering with both your professional and personal responsibilities and without being overwhelmed?
I do. Part of what I do in my daily work really will help to benefit me in the staff regent role, right? Because I am connected to all of the divisions within the campus. So I don't see the extra time as a challenge. I do have probably the smallest kids obviously on this, but I do have a great support system, so that part is, well taken care of. And I do want my kids to see what I can do professionally. I try to be a good role model for them. And, mom can do it all, and I'm going to do that. And I still, to this day, never get overwhelmed with what's thrown at me. That's just one of the things that I do pride as a strength. It's a challenge. I always welcome that. I take on additional responsibilities. I've done that since I've been here without the additional pay and any of that, because I really truly like what I do. And if I didn't, I wouldn't be up here. Again, the time's not an issue. It's because of the outcome that we can see, and we can do that together. So I really truly am excited for the time it'll take and for this role.
Thank you, Chair. Brian, what should the board's role be in approving salary increases of top administrators?
Well, I think that according to who the top administrators are, that if you're looking at the deans and I guess the vice presidents, I think that the board has an oversight role in all university and day-to-day decisions need to be run by the president and by the administration. So I think the board should have decision-making on the president's approval on the president's salary, but then everything else should run through kind of the senior leadership that the board's put in place.
Thank you. Jennifer, what should be the board's role in approving salary increases of top administrators?
You know, the board does have a fiduciary responsibility to the institution as a whole. Salaries are just a small piece of that. I mean, there is the process for which salaries should be approved, and depending on the position, that's what should be followed. If the board needs to weigh in on that, whether that be a contract or something within their purview, then obviously they should be able to make that decision. But again, in terms of what my salary is, I think that should come from the supervisor in charge of that. And again, it's all based on market research. I mean, nobody's should be able to say, I expect to make X amount and be able to get that. Again, you show support, you look at what best practice is, you look at what that role would get in a very similar role. And if there's not a role that directly matches that, then you look at, but we do have processes in place at the institution that we should follow. And again, if the board then has a vote in that shared governance for whatever that is, then that's what, you know, they should have purview over. But
So the board actually approves salaries after the fact. Most people who participate in that process are aware of that. So how are salaries determined? Well, Jennifer, you know, she hit the nail on the head, right? It's human resources is heavily involved in that. Depends on, we have X number of dollars in a budgeted line. We have market data. And salaries are it's difficult to have a conversation about salaries out of the context of the individual's experience, education, and the oversight they're going to be responsible for and what they're bringing into the institution with them. So the President Caboni is the fiscal officer responsible for Western Kentucky University. And I do believe the board continues to have oversight for his total compensation, but otherwise I do feel like we have the appropriate mechanism for looking at compensation for leadership.
Jennifer, do you consider requiring departments to spend only 92% of their allotted budget to be a sign of a mature university?
I mean, I think that as me as a unit manager, I mean, whether or not you tell me I can spend 92% now or then, I'm not so sure. I mean, depending on the size of your budget, I guess, and what 8% would mean. But for me, I'd like to believe that I wasn't going to spend 100% of it anyway. I haven't to this date. I've not overspent my budget. I do return money to the institution. It's not because I'm budgeted too much money. It's just we've had to figure out a way to be more efficient with what we have. And so I'm not upset that, you know, they're keeping a little bit back in case we need it. I'd like to think that that's okay, and we've planned for that. But for me as a budget manager, I'm okay with that at the moment. I just would like some reward for perhaps not spending over every time, and to have some of that back and to be a good steward of that. But again, with full transparency, other units that are spending, maybe maybe they decided they were going to front load to make sure they covered all of the things they knew they have to pay and then see what's left. So a lot of that's timing and a lot of that's miscommunication across campus. And so I think through the whole process, there needs to be a little bit more transparency in in that and why the decision was made to do that.
So, in the capacity of my current position, I do understand that the decision was made to do that because what we're trying to do is essentially adjust our expenditures to match, or to adjust our expenditures to match our revenue. That's what we're doing. It's a responsible thing to do. All entities and organizations across the globe do that. You even do that in your personal life, right? You spend more than you bring in. And so asking people to be more cautious with 8% of their budget is actually beneficial for you for two reasons. One is it's going to prevent you from going into the red. It reminds you to continually be monitoring those expenses. And if you are like Jennifer and you are successful always or most of the time at coming in under budget, not because you're depriving people of things, but because you are being more efficient, then I agree that there should be something built. And the RAM model is designed to have built within it ways of awarding or rewarding areas for doing that. So we're just new to the process, but I think as we continue down this road, we'll get better at that.
Do you mind to read the question?
Sure. Do you consider requiring departments to spend only 92% of their allotted budget to be a sign of a mature university?
I don't think it's a question of maturity. I think it's a question of fiscal responsibility. I think that we have when you put a budget together, a budget is just your best guess at the time of what you anticipate your revenue and expenditures to be. And then throughout the course of the year, you evaluate what those revenues actually come in and what actual cash you receive compared to what those budgeted revenues and your expenditures. And then you change accordingly to what happens. So if your revenues are not coming in as you anticipated in the budget, then obviously just like at home, if your revenue goes down or you don't get a check that you thought you were, you're going to cut your expenses. And that's what the university is doing. They're being fiscally responsible.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, due to time constraints, this will be our last question. Amber, in your opinion, is WKU headed in the right direction?
In my opinion, WKU is headed in the right direction. If you look at where we are in comparison to other institutions in Kentucky, as well as other comprehensive institutions, I mean, we are knocking it out of the park. We truly are. I know it doesn't feel that way sometimes, as I said in my opening statement, because change is hard, transition feels chaotic, but there are folks all over this campus doing super extraordinary things. And I think if we just continue to try to work hard and live together, continue to remind leadership and the Board of Regents of everything that's important to us, we are and will continue to be on the right trajectory.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Brian. In your opinion, is WKU headed in the right direction?
Yes, I absolutely think it is. I think we have the personnel in place and we have the budget model in place, quite frankly. I mean, I'm a fan of the RAP model and I'm a fan of the opportunities it's going to provide. But I think that we have the leadership in place that we need, and that I think the tremendous growth that we've had, even in enrollment with enrollment being up this year, and when the numbers of when I talk to projected students and just the vibe that you get on campus, that when you compare it to other campuses around the Commonwealth, there's no comparison of the home feeling you get and the beauty of this campus and the opportunities here. I think that we're definitely on a good path.
Jennifer, do you feel WKU is headed in the right direction?
I do. And again, I think, that direction is to be determined by all of us and how we make the most of that. I really do think that we are headed in the right spot. We have some more work to get there, and that's stuff that we do every day to make sure that, the future and long-term success of this is what we make it. Again, that's why I come to work every day. I put my best foot forward. I do my best to represent the institution on campus as well as off campus. And I'm really excited about our future. And, again, that's why I come to work every day and do what I do so that my kids can come here and have that future that I mean, I've been other places and I can tell you this campus is fantastic. It's got the best group of people that you can work with. And I'm really excited for it.
I would like to give each candidate 30 or 60 seconds to do a closing thing, starting with Brian. Go ahead.
Thank everybody for coming today, and thank for people that are watching online. I do, like I said, love this university. I graduated from here back in 1992, and feel like I've been some part of the university ever since. Even if it's coming back for ball games or until I've started working here. I would appreciate your vote. I hope to represent the staff in the best way that I possibly can, and I look forward to the opportunity of serving you.
Jennifer.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, again, like I said in the opening, each of us come from a little bit different background, but we truly do want what's best for staff. I truly believe that, you know, the work that I do every day, I can continue to do with in a staff regent role to make sure that we have their support in what we're doing. I have really good relationships across campus with many of you, and many of you that aren't in this room that may be watching online. And I know that you really need a representative that's willing to advocate for you and to understand what you do and how you play a role in the campus as a whole. And again, like I said, it's that puzzle to where we all fit together, and it looks really good once it's done, and we should frame it. And so I know that if, you know, you do choose me, just like I said in the beginning, I will use this platform to speak up for you. I'm going to know what your interests are and how I can represent those moving forward, and really truly to showcase and champion for all your hard work, because you do really amazing work. And I would appreciate your vote on the 15th.
First of all, let me say thank you to the staff regents, as Brian already has, for hosting the forum, and for everybody to participating both in person and via Zoom. I'd like to thank both Regent Brinkley for, you know, your hard work and dedication. You've actually been serving, I think, 2 terms now. And of course, Regent Spiller is getting ready to start his second term. So I know whoever is elected to this will work quite closely with Regent Spiller. I, in my role, advocate for you every day already. I advocate for you when I'm comparing compensation across the board to make sure it's equitable. I advocate for you every time I review policies, procedures, and everything that we do to try to be more efficient operationally. And if you elect me as your regent, that will continue. I will use this platform to advocate for you, represent you, listen to you, and carry your concerns to the board. Thank you for your time.
Thank you all. Jordan.
Thank you. Ciao, everybody. That will conclude our staff regent forum. Again, I'd like to extend thanks to our candidates. I've never sat on that side of the podium. I imagine it's a little tougher than the other side. For folks that submitted questions, we did limit the number of questions we asked based on time. We targeted an hour, and we've nailed that pretty close. So if you had a question that didn't get answered, I think all of our candidates would appreciate if you would reach out and let them know what your concerns are. I've got to watch David in this role for 6 years, and that's a big chunk of it. I will say we don't edit the questions a lot. We don't know the context. So some of those felt a little awkward, but I think that's what you get in that role, is maybe somebody who's coming to you to fill in the information. So I appreciate you all taking on those questions and giving your best foot forward. So thank you all very much for joining us. We are, our meeting's adjourned.